Hello everyone and welcome back to a brand new video and welcome to day 71 of our F125 hot lap and track guides. Yes, we return this weekend here to the Temple of Speed for the Italian Grand Prix. Now of course, if you missed out on the video that went live a few days ago from Zandvoort, I would highly recommend going back and checking it out. Obviously Zandvoort and Hungary, two very different circuits to what we've got here at Monza today. This place of course is, as I said, the Temple of Speed, so minimal wing, huge braking zones, and a lot of bravery and confidence in the car are absolutely critical around here. I find this track is a bit of a weird one to try and get hooked up with the F2 machines. A lot of places where it's really satisfying when you get it right, but really annoying if you get it ever so slightly wrong. You kind of either feel like you gain 3/10 through a corner or lose 3/10 through a corner. It's a really odd one, and it's kind of great for learning kind of that finer detail that you need with the F2 machines inside F125. But yeah, can be a brutal learning curve, and especially if you kind of get in the wrong mindset around here as well, you're in for a lot of pain, because unless you can kind of get back into the right kind of rhythm, you're going to really lose a lot of time. Of course, if you're new to this series and don't know what this is about, I basically provide you with race-ready F2 setups inside the F125 game. I talk you around the track, where your braking markers should be, what gears you want to be using, and any other kind of useful nuggets of information I can provide. And then last but not least, I leave you with a hot lap. As always, timestamps will be linked down in the description below if you just want to head to a certain part of this video. A massive thank you to everybody for their continued support. If you are new and you aren't already, please do make sure you hit that sub button as well. But yeah, without further ado then, let's head out onto the track. Well, making our way then down in towards the Alboreto curve then to start a lap here from the Temple of Speed. Nice and early on the throttle, 4th gear as you make your way out of the corner, and then you are going to be foot flat to the floor as you cross the start-finish line there. Activate the DRS as soon as you can, just as you go over the start line. I always find there's an ever so slight delay here at Monza. Maybe it's just me being a bit strange, but I always find, yeah, you've kind of got to double, sometimes do it twice to actually get the DRS to work. But of course, yeah, making your way though down in towards turn 1, you want to be over on the left-hand side of the circuit. You want to brake at about 125 meters out from the corner, just to make sure that you get the car slowed down, but nice and gently through the gears, and be really careful that you don't lock up the rears. The first chicane is probably the biggest time gainer or loser around this entire lap. You want to bring the car all the way down to 2nd, but you want to try and get wedged nicely over this inside curve there through turn 1. You want your right-hand side wheels to be over the orange sausage curve, as you can see on the inside of it. So yeah, you want basically the car positioned about here, but just be very careful that you can bottom out there. Try not to take too much curb through the second part, but you just want to make sure that you maximise how early you get on the throttle on the exit, but avoid any wheel spin, otherwise you're going to lose bags of time out of the corner. Through Curva Grande then, of course, completely flat out. You're going to be cycling back up through the gears once more. Hug the apex just to give yourself the shortest run as we prepare ourselves for the next chicane up at turn 4 there. 6th gear as we climb up the hill, and again you want to be looking just at the 100-meter board on the outside there. Brake just before it, and you want to go from 6th gear all the way down to 2nd. I actually use 3rd on my hot lap, but 2nd gear is much quicker. So attack the first curb as best as you can, really get the car wedged over the sausage curb on the exit, and then be careful not to run wide through the gravel. Again, avoid wheel spin at all cost through the exit of the corner. Up into the first Lesmo, 4th gear on the way in. Just blend the brake and the throttle through the first part there, but try and meet the apex and get back on the loud pedal as early as you can. Again, leave it in 4th as we prepare ourselves for the next corner. A quick dab of the brake at the 50-meter board before you tip the car in. Try and really attack the curb as best as you can and maximise the run off of the turn. Of course, as I've said so many times, these F2 cars can take a lot of curb. So, yeah, you can really try and maximise the second Lesmo to carry the run down the hill and in towards Sector 3, and of course the infamous Ascari. 6th gear once again, looking at the 100-meter board on the outside. That is where you want to be getting on the anchors. Down 2 gears, really attack their first curb as best as you can. Don't be afraid to let the car run out quite wide through the second part there, and you can even get away with using a little bit of the sausage curb before you again try to maximise the final curb. Be careful not to run wide before you are back up into 5th gear once more and preparing yourself for the final corner of the lap. you've done all the hard work at this point. This final turn actually pretty easy in these F2 machines. Once again, 6th gear, you want to brake just as you go past the end of the AstroTurf on the outside. At about 80 metres out, that's when you want to be getting on the anchors. From 6th down to 4th, meet the apex curb nice and early, and then try to give yourself the shortest run out of the final corner. Foot flat to the floor, and like I said, be careful, because you can really keep the car over on the right-hand side to get back to the timing beam just a little bit quicker. And there we go then. That is going to be a lap of a Monza. It is one of those tracks that is easy to learn, difficult to master. You know, we see it all the time in real Formula 1 and Formula 2, that, you know, if you absolutely get the lap nailed, you can gain so much time here. And of course, normally in Formula 2, it's a really close qualifying session. But of course, in F1, it's normally a bit more kind of defined by, you know, car characteristics and things like that as well. Let's head back to the pit lane though, and I'll talk you guys through the setup. Well, having a look then at our global leaderboard, you can see we're about 8 tenths away from the world record there, but 42nd in the world. I reckon if I absolutely got a lap like bang on perfect, a 127 is doable here, and that would once again put us inside the top 10. There does seem to be a little less kind of difference between a race ready and a qualifying trim F2 setup. I think it's obviously because of the battery and everything like that. There's a lot less to manage, and obviously tyre wear is a lot more forgiving, and so are the curbs in Formula 2 then. No wing whatsoever. I mean, it's Monza, you're going to be running very little wing anyway, but none at all in the F2 cars. Again, you can get away with it. Again, it gives you a little bit more straight line speed. It also allows you to rotate the back end of the car a bit more around the corners, so 0-0 wing around this circuit. 160 though for your on and off throttle diff. Again, I've seen people running higher off throttle differential, but I just find it gives you a little bit of stability, a little bit of what I like to call saveability as well inside the car. So if you get a bit of wheel spin out of turn 2, for example, or out of turn 5, it just allows you to kind of catch the car a little bit more. So theoretically, you might be leaving a 10th on the table, but it's a race-ready setup. You might make that little slip up. So I would rather have a bit of saveability in the car than maybe losing out, you know, on out and out, maybe an extra 10th that you'll gain again anyway in a DRS zone. Or, of course, you might gain the place because the car in front of you span off because they're running a completely locked off-throttle differential. Absolutely minimum camber and tow as well, as always. That is just the meta with the F2 cars. Works really well, obviously, especially around Monza, because it basically just gives you, obviously, especially with the tow angle, no real kind of resistance down the straights as well. The camber does work slightly differently, but you basically just want to, you know, have a bit of squat at the rear of the car, as is proven with the suspension setup. 37 on the front, 7 on the rear, allows the car to really kind of hunker down off of the corners, you know, out of those big traction zones. 11-18 though for your anti-roll bars, so again, firm front suspension, softer front anti-roll bar, and then vice versa on the rear of the car. 20-45 ride height though. Again, unlike the F1 cars, you can really get away with a lot of curb. So, you know, through that second chicane is the big one around here. But the F2 cars handle it really nicely. So 20-45 I've had no issues with in all of my practice or race sim runs. 57-100 for your brake pressure and bias. I thought that Austria was going to be the worst one for this, but Monza, where every braking zone here is just in a straight line, you want to run a really heavy front bias because you are always better locking up the fronts than locking up the rears in these cars. Turn 1 is kind of like the only really horrible braking zone. The rest of them around here aren't too bad, so that's why, yeah, the front brake bias is so aggressive, but obviously you want to try and keep 100% pressure if you can. But what I would say is, you know, use whatever you normally run in this game and then up the front brake bias by 1 or 2%, and that should give you a good balance around this circuit as well there. Of course, normally I run 55% front brake bias and 100 pressure, so yeah, this just kind of works out nicely with that. And then last but not least, 25.5 front PSI, 21.7 on the rear. Again, gives you a little bit of grip, but does allow you to look at the tyres just a little bit more as well over a race stint. So fingers crossed, yeah, that, and you know, a one stop is easily possible in a feature, and obviously you don't pit in an F2 sprint race as well. Tyre wear isn't really much of a consideration still inside this game. Thank you all though so much as always for watching. If you have enjoyed, please do make sure you leave a like, get yourself subscribed. I really do hope these setups are still continuing, you know, to provide you guys with some important information as well with F125. But yeah, I will be back though very soon out in Baku. That is going to be an unforgiving track to try and get a lap hooked up. But for now, I'm going to leave you all with a hot lap.